Welcome back, Matt.
Back in
Episode
black.
episode what?
144.
There you go.
Oh,
Now, there's a reason why I do that, and people shoot me text or messages and pick on me because Matt doesn't listen to the show if he don't know what episode we're on. It's kind of like an inside thing with some of the listeners on here. So that's why I do it. I want to put him on the spot, but I also tell him before we record what episode we're on, so he doesn't
right
mess
before.
up. Yeah, yeah, he's our biggest fan. He may be our only fan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Could
yeah.
be. Could be.
So, Matt, what you been up to, bud?
Man, we have survived holidays, ready for the year, man. It's going to be a year. I'm fired up. I got a good little break, caught some fish. That always calms me down. So I got my mind geared on the year now, and it's time to roll, and got a lot of stuff going forward this year. Is going to be pretty cool, I hope. So that's it, man. Just rocking and rolling.
Well, good deal, man. We got a new year, 2026, first episode recorded, and we've got our friend Jason out of Lindale, right, Jason?
Yes, out of Lindale, originally from Minden, and then lived in Shreveport, Bossier area for a while.
There you go. Lindale, Texas, and he's out of Shreveport, Bossier area, originally relocated over there. And glad to have you on, Jason. We do appreciate anyone that wants to come on and tell their story. These stories are amazing. And those of us in the rooms that have been around a while that get to actually watch it, it's almost impossible to tell it the way it gets seen. But hey, we want to hear a story no matter what. We want to hear people's recovery story because it is possible. And I'll say it again, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I used to say that a lot until I got to know Matt. And now it's more like if Matt can do it.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So all it really involves is getting your head out of your you know what. Once you start that process, the rest is gravy after that. So
So
uh
you want to introduce Jason for us, Matt?
yeah, so and this is a funny story about Jason. I was picking on him the other night about it. So when he was up here in our area, I met him at the Koala Club a year or two ago. And we were talking about the podcast. He's like, "Yeah, I'll listen." So him and me are the two listeners we have, by the way, him and me. But and Miss Judy, she listens. But I was like, "Hey, man, you need to come on and tell your story. We'd love to have you come on." And he said, "No, I'm not ready to do that now. And a lot of people tell us that, and no big deal." So anyway, he moves to Texas, and I'm talking to our friend Lisa, who moved down there, and she sends me a list of people that are willing to tell their story that we can have on this year coming up. And Jason's name's on there. And I'm like, wait a minute. He must think Lisa is nicer than me or something, because he wouldn't come on when I asked, but he would when Lisa asked. And then I realized it's just persistence. Lisa never gives up. So anyway, however it worked out, we're super glad he's on here, and I'm ready to hear it. So
Yeah. Take it away, Jason. Go right ahead.
All right, I'm Jason. I am an alcoholic. I have let God keep me sober since February 28, 2017. And I guess I'll just start at the beginning. I was born in Minden, and I was a latchkey kid. You remember that term back in the 80s when you
Yep.
got yourself off the bus, and I had the key on the rope and all that stuff. And I spent a lot of time by myself because Mama worked a lot. That's when the Shell plant was booming, and that's where she worked. I was a fat kid, and so I had to deal with a lot of things that come along with being a fat kid. And also during this time, I was being sexually abused by a neighborhood person, and so that shaped a lot of my childhood. And so I was always angry and irritable, restless, and discontented for my childhood. And I used to do a lot of lying and manipulating, just whatever it was. And this was 6, 7, 8 years old. And so it wasn't any fault of my mother. She was just working. But I wouldn't ever tell anybody about all the stuff that was going on. She knew I was dealing with the bullies and all that stuff, and I'd get in trouble for fighting and all those things. And one incident occurred with this sexual abuse that made me actually say something to my mother about it. And at that time she was able to stop it. And but she was, she just didn't know how to handle that, I don't think. And then so the opportunity came up for me to move to Burleson, Texas. to
Mhm.
live with my aunt and uncle. And my aunt and uncle's house was your quintessential Leave It to Beaver, two parents, two kids, church, sports, just a nice, stable home. And not that mama's was unstable, but with all that trauma and mama trying to figure this all out, I made the choice to go live with my aunt and uncle. And it turned out to be one of the best choices I ever made in my life. I got out there and I get to Burleson, Texas with a second grade reading level in the fourth grade. And, I start making good grades. I start getting into sports and getting into church. And, the lying, the cheating, and the manipulating still followed me. And I still acted like that. And I'd get in trouble for lying about things and being irritable, restless, and discontented, just pissed off. I was really just pissed off and didn't really know what to do with that. And so I poured a lot of that anger into sports, and I carried all that into high school. And I was playing football and had an injury. And my mother never really liked for me to play football. And, I always went back and forth between Burleson and Minden. Mama was always in Minden. My aunt and uncle were always in Burleson. And so I'd go home when I say home, I'd go to Minden on vacations and holidays and then the summer. And of course, after I left and came back, all that abuse stuff then never took place again. But, I still had the after effects of it. And so I was playing football in my sophomore year and had an injury. And so I had to quit playing football. Well, when I quit playing football, I discovered Miller Genuine Draft, and it took care of my anger too. And it took care of my anger in a very, very good way. And I always say that I was a blackout drinker from the very first time I drank. I bought a 12 pack. I drank every single one of them. I woke up and or came to, and the most I remember that night is somebody bet that I couldn't drink a bottle of Tabasco, and I did. And that was the worst heartburn I've ever had in my entire life.
I
It,
bet some other stuff burnt too.
it was it was horrible, man. It was horrible, but I knew I was like, how can I feel like that again? And because all that stuff that I felt, went away. I didn't feel ashamed and remorse and like I was a dirty person, or I didn't feel like that anymore. I felt just like I don't want to say king of the world. I just felt normal, I guess, maybe. All right. And I just felt good. And so I continued to drink. Now, I wasn't an everyday drinker from that point forward, but I can't recall a time that I drank that I didn't set out to get drunk. There was never that, hey, man, let's go have a couple of beers type of thing. I'd have a couple of beers if that's all there was, but the whole time I only got to have those couple of beers, I still wanted more. And I could never really understand that. And because as far as I was concerned, I was drinking to stop all that stuff going on in my head. Later in the program, I'd find out I drank because I like the way it felt. I like the effects produced by alcohol.
Yep.
And so I'm a singer in high school and I'm not playing any sports and I'm partying as much as I can. And I had started dabbling with some other substances, and I wouldn't do it until I actually got so obliterated drunk I couldn't remember. So I tried a little pot, and then I got into college, and I discovered the perfect trifecta of marijuana, alcohol, and Xanax. And it was the cocktail of the lifetime. I was like, I can do anything I want to do on that. And then so I set out for a long time trying to get just the right mixture where I could still function, not pass out, and drive. And so, just to get, to where I needed to go. And I went into my adulthood life like that. I ended up going to college at UTA for a year, and I partied that whole freshman year. And I think my grade point average was a .672 when I got done. And
Mm.
my mom says, she goes, I think you need to take a semester off, figure out what you're going to do. I just thought I'm not going to pay for school and you bring back grades like that. And so I took the semester off, and, I worked in some odd jobs and ended up working in a convenience store for a while. And, I held my job in a video poker casino. I worked in a video poker casino at nights and Benton, actually Toomey Starks, just right over the line. I don't know if you know where Toomey Starks is, but it's just right over the line from Orange, Texas. And because we had moved down there for my dad to get work, and ended up going back to school after that. After working in a convenience store, I was like, you know what? I just don't really think this is the life for me. So I went back to school and actually did well. Between my 20th and 21st year of being in the existence of this world, I decided that I was really overweight and had been my entire life, and I wanted to lose some weight. And decided the only way I was going to do that was to quit drinking. All right. So I quit drinking that entire year and I lost like 100 pounds. I mean, I really got the weight off and I was smoking hella weed and doing other things, but I was not drinking. And I remember the day I turned 21, I went to the convenience store to buy a beer just because I could. And I was going out with some friends that night and I didn't even get carded. I was so irritated. I just wanted to be legal. And because, I was coming from Louisiana, man, I was in the age where we had our drinking age was 18
Yep.
until I was 18 and then it changed to 21. And so we somehow skirted that and drinking in Louisiana was not a problem. Drinking in Texas was not a problem. I had a fake ID. I could just, I could drink anytime I wanted to. So I graduate college and I ended up graduating college in Waco. That's where I landed. And during college in Waco, I discovered some more substances that I like. I dabbled with cocaine and methamphetamines and LSD. I started discovering more things that I like to mix with alcohol. Alcohol was always my baseline, and then I would go do this other stuff. So the combination of all that really worked, and it worked well while I was doing it, but I still had this underlying guilt, shame, or remorse from this abuse I could never do anything with. I went to counseling, and I did this and I did that, but I could never fully let that stuff go. And still, I'm thinking, this is the reason I do this. This is why I stay loaded all the time, so I can deal with the stuff that goes on in my head. And I graduated high school and I moved back to Burleson, all right, get a job and had a successful job and was able to hold that down for a while because I'm the only thing I'm doing at this point in time is I'm drinking it and I'm smoking weed. And you can maintain doing that for a long time. You can get up, go to work, pay your bills, that stuff. I didn't think I had a problem. I just knew that I liked to party and that everybody didn't party like me. So I would be at work and I didn't know this was the obsession at the time, but I would be at work. So I'd wake up in the morning, I'd shower, I'd get ready for work. I'd mix me a big thing of Jack and Coke, put it in an ice chest along with some ice and a cup, and then put it in my truck and I'd have me a couple of little pills or whatever I wanted to take. I'd go ahead and roll me up some joints. And that way, when I got off work, I was ready to roll. All right.
Mhm.
I didn't have to go think about anything. I didn't have to go do anything. I was just ready to go. And it would get to about 3:30, 3:45 and I would just I could taste that Jack and Coke just like it was, like it was in my hand. I was drinking it, and I didn't know that at the time that was the obsession of alcoholism. And I just thought that I really liked to party, and I couldn't wait to get started. And so, the commute between Grand Prairie and Burleson
Yeah.
is a pretty good commute. All right. Well, I
Mhm.
was working in Grand Prairie, living in Burleson. So I would drink that entire time all the way home. All right. Smoking weed, driving in all that traffic, get home, and then just finish the night out, pass out, get up, and do it all over again. Well, I had met this lady that liked to party like I do, and we decided to get married. Everything was hunky dory for a while, and then we got pregnant with our first child, and we lost that child to SIDS. And when we lost his name was Jacob. When we lost Jacob, part of her spirit died, and she just was not able to ever fully recover from that loss. And so, after some rough couple of months in Burleson, we decided to go back to Minden. My stepdad had died, and my mom needed somebody. I'm an only child, and so we decided to get close to mom, and we moved back to Minden. And a couple of months after getting back to Minden, and I'm still doing the same thing. I'm drinking every night, and I don't have a job. I'm a champion at life. I just can't figure it out. I just know that I like to get loaded. And Jessica, that was the name of my first wife. She had another positive pregnancy test, and man, I got loaded one night and I showed my ass. I'm doing donuts around the neighborhood and just hooping and hollering and screaming, just being a colossal asshole is what I was being. And the next morning, I'm nursing my hangover, and she comes into the living room and she goes, "Look, it's going to be the alcohol or it's going to be me and the baby. You're going to have to make a choice." All right. And so that night I went to my first AA meeting. All right. I went to the Alpha group in Minden,
Mhm.
and I stayed sober for a little while, for almost a year. I'm not sure if it was almost a year. It was close. The reason I say almost a year is because somewhere towards the end of that year, I started smoking weed and I got into pain management and I was on opioid pain medication, and that's not sober. As far as I'm concerned, that's not sober. And for me, sobriety is nothing, absolutely nothing, stone cold sober, and so I'm still going to meetings. I'm still smoking weed. I'm taking these Oxycontins, and then together, Jessica and I start smoking weed again, and she starts partying with me again. But there's not any alcohol. It's just the substances. The alcohol is not being used, and so we're taking these pills and we're like crushing them and snorting them, and it was just bad. All right, it was just bad. And then we've got a 3-year-old. All right, and we're trying to figure out how to stay loaded, raise a 3-year-old, and I'm in between jobs all the time. And she was on disability, so we always had a little bit of money coming in, but it was this constant struggle of how we're going to make ends meet and stay loaded and raise the kid, and it was rough. It was hard to deal with, and in between jobs, on all the time, I'd get a good one, strung out, lose it, and they would never fire me directly for drug use, but it was my behavior, it was the lack of integrity, the lack of coming to work on time, just doing a poor job. And, that stuff gets you fired. I was fired because I was strung out on opiates, and then finally got straight a little bit and got off of one, got on the other, ended up on the methadone maintenance program that you can do. And I remember that we're living in an efficiency apartment. I had broken my foot playing church league softball. Okay. Cause I'm trying to keep this chameleon face with the community. Hey, this is a nice guy, but really I'm doing all the drugs I can possibly get my hands on. All right.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to keep this chameleon face on, and so I break my foot, and I couldn't work. The disability payments from her disability is not really enough to make ends meet. And I had this grand scheme, her and I together, to go back to school to get my bachelor's and live on student loans. All right.
Mm.
So I'm at the methadone clinic in Shreveport on crutches, dosing before I go to school at LSUS. All right. And I'm just like, again, just a champion at life and just living life to the fullest. And it was rough. I mean, it was just rough. And I'm still paying on those student loans,
Man.
That's yeah, it's I'm still paying on them. And so I managed to find another job in my field of expertise, and I'm an IT guy and have been my entire life, and that's what my degree is actually in. And so I found me another job, and it's a good job. And I remember I put in my application, they interviewed me, they hired me, and I had to do my physical. And I was like, how am I going to pass the drug test? I mean, what am I going to do about that? And so, well, I had a 4-year-old son, and so we got him to pee in the bottle, and I just
Mm.
like taped it to my leg and carried it in. I just hoped for the best, and that worked out. And so this job was going really well, and we had gotten clean from the methadone, and we were just smoking weed, and she was doing a little drinking, taking all her other stuff. And I decided I wanted to party one night, and I had somebody get us some methadone, and we partied, and I had to go to work, so I went to bed, and she stayed up partying with our friends. And I don't know what happened after I went to bed. I just know she got sick at some point during the night, and I woke up the next morning and gave her a kiss when I was leaving. She was asleep next to me. I gave her a kiss when I was leaving, told her I loved her, and went to work. And I didn't hear from her. It was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and my friend, we had another couple friends staying with us over Christmas, and I called the lady. I said, hey, I don't think something's wrong. I haven't heard from her at all, and said, can you go there and check and see what's going on? And she got over there, and she had died. She died of a drug overdose, and I had a lot of guilt and remorse over that because I was the reason that the drugs were brought to the house and why they were there. And you know, you would think maybe that might have some sort of clarity for me to go, hey, maybe I need to live a different lifestyle. Maybe I need to do something different. Nope, didn't do it at all. Matter of fact, I doubled down. I moved in with my mama so she could take care of my son, and then I could just rip and roar no matter what. And so that was in 2011, and kept that job that I thought was so special for about a year and a half. And this time I've gotten back into methamphetamines and cocaine and all the other things, the opiates. I'm just doing it all. And I managed to hold that job down for a year and a half. And again, the line, the cheating of time, the doctoring time sheets, not work performance, all that finally came to a head, and I got fired. And the night I got fired was the first night I put a needle in my arm. And that was that was my downfall, with that needle going in my arm. I couldn't recover from anything after that. All right. And I spent the next 4 years shooting methamphetamines and doing whatever I had to do in order to make that happen. I was unemployable. The only money I had coming in was for death benefits from my deceased wife, living at my mama's house and leaving her responsible for my son. And if it had not been for that woman almost loved me to death. All right. She could never hold me accountable for my actions. But what she did do is she kept that boy out of CPS. She kept that boy from being taken from the state, because in 2014, I started going to jail. I caught a possession charge for methamphetamines, and that's an automatic felony. And so I got put in diversion for that. Somewhere between 2015 and, 2014, 2015, I thought it was a good idea to start selling drugs, because what's better for a junkie to do to supply their habit than to sell the drugs that you're doing? That didn't work out too well. So in 2015, I got arrested for distribution charges and ended up going to jail for a couple of months. And because I was considered a first time offender, I got out with a hefty probation time and fines. All right. And between 2016, I spent that time on probation and just staying loaded. I don't know why my probation officer wasn't testing me on a regular basis, but this was my thought process during that time is I have to go report. So I'm going to get loaded before I go report in case I go to jail. All right. And so it just made sense to me. So I would do all the things I had to do to get loaded, go report, not test, and get out, and then go get loaded because I didn't get arrested. And it was just a vicious cycle. And
Yeah.
in 2016, Father's Day morning, I'm on my way home because I'd been out all night. And again, because I'm such a champion at life, I got to get home for Father's Day. I'm strung out. I'm driving my mama's car with the window half down, taped up because I won't fix it. It was horrible. And I don't know what you know about Minden, but I'm going down Pine Street, headed to mama's house, and there's a little tuck off there, and the police pulled out and got right behind me. I was like, "This is it. I'm done with." I had just enough to get in trouble, to get another possession charge. And when you're on felony probation and you catch another felony, there is no bail. All right. You don't get to get bailed out of jail. And so my mama tried, but they was like, "Man, we can't get him out this time. He's just going to have to sit there for a while." And that's what I needed. That's where all this started. And so because of that income from my deceased wife, I had enough money to hire an attorney. And, so I went to BDCC for right at 5.5 months. I was there, and that was my longest stint in jail. And he was able to plea me out and have my probation reinstated and send me to rehab and put me in drug court. And they put me in drug court, and I really thought they gave me a death sentence. And I'm like, because I know my history. I'm like, there's no way I can stay sober. There's no way I'm going to pull this off. And he looked at me dead in the eye, and he goes, "You know what, Jason, if you don't do this, they're going to give you 10 years in prison. They're going to make you back up all your time, all of it. They're not playing with you. They're done with you." And I was like, "And I really ain't that bad." He goes, "It doesn't matter. You've gotten yourself into a spot where you're going to get in trouble if you don't complete drug court." And I was like, "All right, well, cool, let's do it." So I went to CADA and got through CADA, got out, and I was out for a week, got loaded. What else am I supposed to do? That's all I know how to do. And I reported to drug court, reported hot, and so I spent the next month and a half in drug court trying to trick these people into thinking I wasn't doing drugs and drinking. And so I would drink a whole bunch of sweet tea before I'd go test, and I'd pee clear, but they don't like it when you dilute your urine so much they can't test it, and so they
Yeah.
consider that a positive. And so I finally got to the point where they're like, we're going to send you back to rehab. So I went back to rehab again, and that was January the 10th. And so my original sobriety date is January the 11th, and I'll get back to that. And so I went to Rabel Recovery, and, I did what I was supposed to do there, just followed the program, did all the writing and all the stuff. And I just wanted to be left alone. I just didn't want to be in trouble. I didn't want to go do 10 years in prison. All right. That was my whole motivation. I didn't really want to be sober. And I'm sitting in that meeting, or I'm sitting in Rabel Recovery, and they bring an outside meeting in. Okay. And these guys from We Care in Monroe would come bring a meeting. And there's this one guy named Donald S. I don't know if y'all know Donald S. He used to live in Shreveport. It's from Lafitte down south, but sobered up Monroe. And he's chairing the meeting, and he's talking about this guy in Monroe who's very integral in his sobriety. And he's describing him, and he said he got a beard and bald head, and taught me the book, and da 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 da. And I was like, and so I went up to him and I asked him after the meeting. I said, "Are you talking about Elijah P?" He goes, "That's exactly who I'm talking about." Well, this Elijah P is going to meetings in Minden, and if there was anybody in this world I was going to ask to be my sponsor, it was going to be him. All right. And I had not asked this man to be my sponsor. Heck, I hadn't even really fully decided I was an alcoholic yet. I figured I was a drug addict, all right? But I didn't know I was an alcoholic. But at that point, right there on that spot, all right, I was like, you know what? When I get back, I'm going to ask Elijah to be my sponsor. And because I'd gotten to the point where I was like, I'm either going to have to suit up or show up. I'm going to have to be sober in order for me not to go back to prison, all right? Or to go to prison. And I'm just not cut from that cloth to be somebody that goes to prison. That's just not something that I need to be doing. So I get back from Rural Recovery, and I go to the speaker meeting in Minden, all right? And I go to Cotton's Chicken. I don't know if you know anything about Cotton's Chicken in Minden, all right?
Yeah.
And I go to Cotton's Chicken to get some chicken before the meeting. And I park the car. Of course, I'm still driving my mama's car. And I get out, and Elijah pulls up right next to me. I hadn't talked to this man, hadn't seen him, hadn't nothing. All right. Pulled up right next to me, and I hopped out of the car and said, "Hey, will you be my sponsor?" He's like, "Man, I don't even know who you are."
Some guy at the chicken
I'm
joint.
trying to get some chicken.
Scared the crap out of him, man. Scared the ever-loving crap out of him. He said, "Look, dude, just go to the meeting. We'll talk about it. All right? We'll talk about it. All right?" So, go to the meeting. We chit-chatted for a little while. And he goes, "Look, I know you're in drug court. I've had a lot of experience with people in drug court. They say a lot of stuff when they're in drug court, and then they get out, and I don't ever see them again." He goes, "So let's just start chatting. We'll see what happens." And so we chatted for a couple of weeks, and I'd see him. I was going to my meetings just like drug court wanted me to, getting my paper signed. I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing for drug court. All right. A couple of weeks later, he said, "All right, been praying about this. Let's start working some steps." I said, "Okay, well, let's start working some steps." He goes, "But before we start that, I want you to do this." All right. He goes, "I want you to read 3 pages in your big book every day. All right. I want you to call me every day. I want you to ask God to keep you sober every day. All right. I want you to make an AA commitment and keep it weekly, whatever that might be. Pick somebody up, take them to a meeting, chair a meeting, pick up the trash, whatever it might be. Just make an AA commitment. Get 2 numbers from 2 different men every meeting. Call them the next morning and ask them how they stay sober on a daily basis. All right." He goes, "Let's see how you do with that for the next couple of weeks." All right. So I did that, and I did everything I want that man asked me to do because, well, I need to backtrack a little bit because I got ahead of myself. So before we started working together, I had this court date that was coming up in drug court. So I'd gotten back from Rural Recovery. There was some stuff that was left at my mama's house that I decided I wanted to smoke. All right. And so I'm still, I hadn't talked to Elijah yet. And so, I'm smoking this stuff on the back porch, and it was synthetic marijuana. And I knew I had this court date coming up that was going to decide if I was going to do this 10 years in prison or not. And so I smoke this stuff, and then I pass out, and then I come to, on my mama's back porch, and I get up and I go inside and I flush that stuff. All right. And I ain't never flushed anything in my entire life. But I flushed that, and I was like, that was my moment of clarity. I was like, what in the hell are you doing with your life? Are you going to continue to do that? Are you going to put your child through you going to prison? And so when I flushed that I've been sober from that point forward. And so that was February 27th, 2017. So my sobriety date's February 28th. All right. I need to say that to say what I had to say later. And so I go to that court date, and when I get to the court date, I had lied on my community service paperwork, saying I was in Bossier and Minden at the same time. And my director said, "You cannot possibly be in 2 different places at the same time." I just looked at her, and she goes, "We'll take care of it in a minute." And so I went in front of the judge, and he said, "Look, they said that you lied on your community service paperwork. I just want you to be honest with me." All right. And, it felt like I stood up there and thought about it for 5 minutes, but it was probably 15, 20 seconds. All right. And I thought real hard about if I'm going to fix and try to lie to this man. And he goes, "I just want you to tell me the truth." I said, "Yes, sir. I did lie on my paperwork. There's no way I could possibly be in 2 different places at the same time." He goes, no, there's not. And he goes, you know what? I just appreciate you being truthful with me. I don't get people telling me the truth up here very often. I just said, yes, sir. And he goes, you know what? They want me to put you in jail for 3 days for your sanction. I'm going to put you in jail for 2. But okay. And so I went to jail and had to call my kid again. Hey, I'm going back to jail. And he's like, and so I get into, it was Bossier Max where I went. And so I get into the pod and they shut that door behind me, and my cellie's in there. He's trying to hustle me out everything I got on. And I hustled him back and said, look, man, I'm getting out of here in 2 days. You can have everything I got on if you just feed me for the next 2 days. He goes, fine, we'll take care of that. And I hop in the top bunk. I don't know if you've ever been to jail or not, but there's a light in your pod that it don't ever shut off. It just stays on all the time. And I'm sitting there staring at that light, and I say to myself, I said, I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but I'm fixing to do whatever I have to do to never come back into this place right here, to never be locked up again. And then I got out, and the next weekend I saw Elijah. All right. And that's what started the process. I asked Elijah to be my sponsor. He put me what I call the 2-week challenge, because that's what I do with my new guys too. He said, this is going to tell me 2 things: how much you're going to lie to me and how serious you are. All right. And so I did everything that man asked me to do, and we started working steps, and he read the book to me like I was in elementary school. I mean, like I was in 2nd grade. We sat down, we started on the white cover. He said, I want you to draw the unity circle. I want you to put God in the middle, and I want you to put ego underneath it. That's what we're trying to do, is deflate your ego. He goes, what you know about being sobriety is on that very first page, and there ain't nothing on that first page. All right. Nothing. And I've heard that said from other people before, but at the time he was telling to me, it was like he was speaking gold or something. I was like, you're right. I know absolutely nothing about being sober. And so I was just hungry. I wanted to do whatever I had to do to not get locked up again and not do 10 years in prison. All right. And if that was the motivation I had at the time, that was enough. All right. And so we started working steps, and, I was very agnostic. I had a childhood God that I was raised with. I was raised in the Methodist church. I was the candle carrying acolyte thing with the robe and all that stuff on, confirmed at 13, all that class and stuff. And so youth and this and that. And so I had a lot of church, but I had no spiritual connection. I had no relationship with a higher power. And thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous giving me the permission to choose my own concept of a higher power. And I was able to choose a concept and become willing to start believing in that power, to restore my sanity, that I could choose of my own. And it was very simple, y'all. I kept thinking that God was, I'm not going to worship some guy that's going to have some divine plan that's going to take my wife and take my kid and, allow all this bad shit to happen in my life. I'm not going to put any belief into something like that. And I couldn't, but I could put a belief into something that my own concept, and I was able to do that. And so I carried that willingness into the 3rd step. And in the 3rd step, I had a vital spiritual experience. I had the type of spiritual experience that Bill W. describes when we're at Elijah's house and we're doing the 3rd step in the book, and we get on our hands and knees and we say the 3rd step prayer. And I felt this energy come through me. I mean, it was like I did a shot of dope. My eyes dilated, my hair stood up. Of course, I don't have any hair, but it all tingled, and I felt this energy come over me, this just calm, like everything's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And from that point forward, I was never agnostic again. I never questioned the existence of a higher power. There was a presence in that room that I have not experienced from that day forward, but that day I did it, and it was powerful. It was life changing. And it altered my sense of what goes on outside of what I can see, hear, touch, and smell. And I was like, good God Almighty, that's what these people are talking about.
Yeah.
And so the fear of the 4th and the 5th step wasn't there. I didn't fear that inventory. I didn't fear doing that confession. All right. I wanted it. So I poured my heart into that inventory. And so there was a couple of weeks before I could do my 5th step. And Elijah just says, hey, man, just go back over it. Just go back over your 4th step. Make sure you haven't missed anything. And so I'm pouring back over this thing, and it hits me like a ton of bricks. Damn, been living a damn lie this whole time. You've been telling people you got a January 11th sobriety date, and you know for sure that you weren't sober on January 11th. All right. for sure you weren't sober. I picked up a year chip on that sobriety date. All right. Man, I had found a Xanax in my jacket, a Ravel. I took that. I smoked that stuff when I got back. I couldn't tell anybody about it. I was the only person that knew. But if I was to tell anybody about it, I might go do that 10 years in prison. I put that stuff so far out of my mind, I completely forgot about it until I was doing my inventory. I call out, hey man, I got a problem. And he goes, what's the deal? He goes, man, I used during this time, and I've been saying this is my sobriety date. Uncle, he goes, all right. Well, do you know when you were sober? I said, yeah. He goes, well, go to the group, change your sobriety date. Matter of fact, Jason, is most people don't know your damn sobriety date. It's for you. And he goes, how much time are you losing? Like a month and a half. He goes, just go change your sobriety date, move on with life. Have you been sober since you and I have been working together? Yes, I have been. He goes, then don't worry about it. Just go change it, make it what it's supposed to be, and go on. And I did that, and it was, I thought it was going to be this big booger bear. People looked at me, cool, and they just went on about their
Move
business.
on. Just
Just
moved
move
on.
on.
Just,
I thought it was a big deal. And
something to
I
keep
had
you
one
up all
guy
night.
that, yeah, all night long. I had one guy that bought me a Zippo lighter with that January 11th sobriety date. He walked it to me. He goes, "Oh, I guess that lighter's not any good anymore." So we get to do the fifth step, and man, sitting on that little couch at the Alpha House in Minden, Louisiana. I don't know if y'all know that couch that I'm talking about where we
I
did
do,
my
yeah.
fifth step. And all that stuff that I carried throughout my childhood into junior high and high school, all that stuff with the abuse and the this and the that, I was able to let all that stuff go. I was able to forgive those people, move on with my life, and later in life actually develop some sort of compassion for them because what did they have going on that make them want to do that to me? To me, that is when I have given that stuff completely to my higher power and to somebody else, the power of it's gone. All right. But it's my responsibility to talk about it because I know for sure there's other men suffering from the same thing I suffered from that continue to drink and drug because they think they are less than of a person because of the stuff that happened to them. And I'm talking about male to male sexual abuse, not heterosexual. And so that was hard to deal with in life. And I use that as a victimhood to stay loaded for a long time. All right. And so if there's anybody out there that's hearing this, there is a way out. All right. There is a way out. And I found it in the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So 6, 7, and 8, I was instructed to read the 12 and 12 for 21 days. All right. Every day, 6, 7, and 8, read those steps. And then we sat down, we did my amends list. And one of the people that was on my amends list, actually my very first amends was I was not going to put on my amends list, which was my father, because, I didn't ever have a relationship with him. And I thought that was something that was his fault, not my fault. And Elijah said, that's going to be your very first one. That's the one you're going to do. And I learned to do amends by writing a letter, and you state that you're putting your life back together and that you've been in Alcoholics Anonymous and that what you were wrong for, what you can do to amend your behavior, have you affected them in any other way, and then you shut up and listen. And so that's what I did. And for somebody I've never had a relationship with, for me to go making amends to them for something that I didn't think I had actually done wrong was a powerful thing. And I would like to say that amends mended that bridge and we have an active relationship now, but we don't. I've reached out several times to try to repair that. And, we text on holidays and birthdays, but we don't get to see each other. And that's okay. That's okay. And so what I do with that is I continue to make a living amends and try to be the best daddy I possibly can. All right. The best daddy I possibly can. And so I'm still in drug court. And I have not been in any type of romantic relationship at all since my wife passed. Well, let me take that back. Meaningful relationship. I had drug fueled stuff. I actually fathered a baby with a lady that my heavy drug use but nothing, concrete, substantial. And so I'm in drug court. I've gotten my life back together so much from working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm working the window at drug court, handing people their drug test. Okay. And this lady walks up and we met, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. I just handed her a drug test. We, chit chatted back and forth. She went on about her business. Man, y'all, this lady, she's a smoke show. I mean, she just young and hot and not anything that I ever thought I would have any kind of romantic relationship with. And So I'm chairing the AA meeting one night, and I'm talking about that I'm probably never going to have another girlfriend, much less another wife. And, I'm still really overweight, and, I'm like, it takes the right kind of woman to like a big boy like me. And the meeting gets over. I'm standing in the hallway talking to one of my buddies, and she walks out of the room, walks by me, and she goes, "I like big boys." And I was like, I looked at my friend, and I was like, "Is she talking to me? Was she talking to me?"
You
And
heard that too,
so,
right?
yeah, I'm not losing my mind, am I? And so, and she was talking to me. And there was a rule in drug court, you couldn't date another person or another client. And so, we flirted back and forth, and I didn't ever do anything about it. And one, I was scared. Two, I wasn't quite sure that she was being truthful. I just didn't trust it. And like, really? Cause I didn't have the self-esteem to feel like I was wanted by anybody, and so I get put in the aftercare, and we're at the same court day. I get put in the aftercare, and I walk out of the courtroom, and I put my arm around her, and I look at her. I said, "I need your phone number now." And so she gave me her phone number. And then 5 minutes after riding down the road, she called me. She goes, "You've been waiting all this time to get my phone number, and you haven't called me yet."
Hmm.
Like she wanted a phone call. And so we met for coffee that afternoon, and we've been together from that point forward. All right. And so we were engaged for a while. We had a baby. We have a 6-year-old daughter now. She helped raise my son that I was referring to from my first wife. And we are, if you want to put a technical term on it, in AA, I 13th stepped her, but I think she kind of 13th stepped me.
What
She
it
had a
sounds
couple.
like.
That's
Yeah,
what.
that's on her, dude. That's on her, dude. You're
You know
clear.
what? That's probably the
Yeah.
first
She
14 step I've ever heard of.
she had a couple of months sobriety, and I had a year. And so we have defied the odds on that, and we have stayed together. We have grown exponentially together. And man, this lady, we had our daughter, and she had an experience while having our daughter that made her want to be a labor and delivery nurse. And we were during the pandemic. She came to me. She wasn't working. She's taking care of, staying home with the baby. And during the pandemic, we were all home. I was working from home, an IT guy. I could do whatever I need to, pretty much remotely. And she said, I want to go to school. I want to be a nurse. I was like, let's do it. We'll do whatever we have to make that happen. We'll do whatever we have to make that happen. And so she started school, and she's a labor and delivery nurse right now. Matter of fact, she
Wow.
goes to work on Sunday. So we have stayed sober together. In our household, physical sobriety is required. All right. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're going to be here, you're going to be sober. And so much so that son that I'm referring to at 16 started not being sober, and I put his ass out because he couldn't get with the rules. And so I sent him to live with his grandma, and that was one of the hardest things I had to do. So backtrack, finish the steps. 10, 11, and 12, they're called the maintenance steps, but it's where my spirituality is based, built every day. And what I mean by that is that 10 and 11, to me, they're married to each other. All right. And it'll even say in the 12 and 12 that, I cannot, and I don't know word for word, but in order for me to have the understanding of God and to increase my consciousness of that higher power, I have to inventory on a daily basis. All right. I have to get rid of my resentments, my fears. And was I dishonest? And, when in the big book, when it says when we retire at night, those questions that it asked me, I do a written inventory every night. All right. It's an online form. I fill it out. I hit submit, and it emails my sponsor. So I do the written inventory, and then I do a silent fifth step, because he gets to see my inventory. Then I go to bed. And then I do my best to help other alcoholics, and with being a sponsor, going to meetings. And I still make those phone calls that I had to do in the very beginning of my sobriety. I don't do it so much so now because I don't always drive to work, but I would do it on my drive to work, where I would call another alcoholic, and we would just start talking about being sober for the day, because we don't start recovering until we start talking about it. Matt's gotten one of those phone calls before. Now that you and
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
talked face
yeah, yeah.
now that you and I have talked face to face, Mike, at some point in time you'll get one. And
Now you got my number, brother.
I'm just gonna call you. I'm gonna go, "How you staying sober today?" And you're gonna go, "This is what I'm doing," and then we're
I
gonna have a
was,
conversation.
hey, you brought that up earlier, man, and I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, we first met, and you told me, you're like, I may call you one day and ask you how you're staying sober, and I was like, okay. He wasn't bullshitting. About 3, 4 days later, he called Hey man, how you staying sober today? I'm like, oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And I
So,
needed it more than you probably, you know?
just one thing that I have had happen to me in recovery, and it was very powerful. And so I'm at work, and that's pretty much, I do that all the time. But I was at work all day, and I got a phone call from someone, and I had the number stored, but I don't talk to this person very much, right? And they called me, and it was another alcoholic, and they were fixing to go do something that was different for them. How about that? Something they don't normally do on a regular basis, and asked me if I would just pray with them. And so, just out of the blue, like, somebody calls me, another man, several years sober, and, "Hey, I'm fixing to go take care of this. I really need some spiritual help. Do you mind praying with me?" And, I ducked off in the office, shut the door, closed my eyes, and we just prayed together right there. And that is probably one of the most powerful things that has ever happened to me, because I don't know if he needed it as much as I did, but I needed it more than
Mhm.
I thought I did.
Mm,
So
Yep.
that was amazing right there. What can happen when an alcoholic talks to another one.
Yep. Yep.
absolutely. And so we just continue to stay sober. And, there's been a lot of ups and downs in sobriety. And I've done some dumb things in sobriety that I shouldn't have done. And, but, get sober through it. I think one of the dumbest things I have done in sobriety is my fifth year. I was in my fifth year and I go on a business trip in Alexandria. All right. And I hadn't gone to a meeting. I hadn't talked to my sponsor. I hadn't prayed. I hadn't done all the normal things that I do on a daily basis. And we get to the end of the conference, and my boss said, "Hey, let's go over here and get some supper." And so we go over there and get some supper. And the normal people sit down. So the waitress brings out this micro brew beer I've never seen before a day in my life, and a cold mug. And they popped the top on that beer and poured it in. It was, you hear the foam sound and the sweat, and I'm like, I got the heat. I mean, the heat just jumped on me, man. I was like, oh my God, I want to drink right now. I want to drink right now. And so I prayed my way through supper, and it was that simple prayer that Elijah taught me: God, keep me sober. God, keep me sober. And so that dissipated. I don't know if it was a panic attack or what it was, but it was not comfortable. And so we got through with supper, and this restaurant has a bar attached to it in Alexandria. And then I had another good idea. They said, "Hey, you want to go over to the bar with us?" Sure, why not? Let's go over there. And I sit down and I get a club soda. And as I'm sitting there drinking my club soda, going, "You should not be in here right now. You should not be in here." Right about that time, my wife, she wasn't my wife at the time, but she called me. I answered the phone. And when I saw her number pop up, I picked up the phone and I bolted. I didn't say
Yep.
bye to my party or nothing.
I
And
knew that was
I'm
coming.
yeah, I'm running out of the bar. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm leaving the bar." And she goes, "You're doing what? You're out of town without me and you're at a bar? What in the fart are you thinking right now?" And I'm like, "I'm not thinking very well." All right. So that caused its own issues. All right. And then I didn't tell my sponsor about it. And I got back. And at this time, I'm going, "We're 5 years sober. You should be able to do whatever you want to. You're supposed to be Mr. AA, and you're not supposed to have this type of stuff that happens to you. And you shouldn't have those feelings." And so I didn't share this with my sponsor for about a week. And then I finally told him what was going on. And he goes, "Well, so you lied to me, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I lied by omission because I didn't tell you what was going on." And then about a month later, it came up in the conversation as we're driving down the road. And my wife said something about it. I said, "If you just really knew what was going on with me that night, you wouldn't be giving me a hard time about it." And she goes, "What was going on with you?" You don't know how bad I wanted to drink that night. That was the real issue, is how bad I wanted to drink and how much it scared me. And I didn't trust her with that, trust her enough to tell her, we've been in this journey of sobriety together with all this. All right. I should be able to trust my wife to know. I should have enough trust to go, "Hey, this is what was going on with me at that time, at the time of that it's happening, not for it to be a month later and then me say something about it." And so I think that's probably the dumbest thing I've done in sobriety. And so now there's a running joke when I go out of town again: don't go to the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay away from the bar.
Don't stay away from the bar. So we're going to fast forward to current day, and I continue to go to between 4 to 5 meetings a week. I have a couple of sponsees that are actively working the steps and continue to make those phone calls. Sobriety is the number one thing in my life because without it, I have nothing else. I have no relationship with a higher power. I certainly don't have a relationship with my family. I don't have a marriage. I don't have a job. I don't have anything. And so if I'm sober, I have the spiritual connection, and then things then fall in line after that. All right. And so during my sobriety journey, there was this guy that I was locked up with, and we didn't know each other until we were locked up together. And so, in jail, you can still party if you want to. And so we partied together a little bit in jail, and we got out right about the same time. And, he's from the Minden area. And so we sobered up together. Okay. And then we started taking meetings back to the jail where we were locked up. So we've had this whole journey with each other. And so a couple of years ago, he called me. He goes, "Hey, man, I applied for a pardon for my felony drug charges." I said, "Really? I didn't know you could do that because I've been held back in my career with this felony that I keep toting around from these distribution charges. I can't get past background checks, and some of the contracts we have are with government agencies, and I can't get equipment that I need because I can't pass their background check." And, it was really holding me back. I said, he goes, "Man, if you want to, I'll help you do this. We can do it without a lawyer. You just pay your little fees that the state charges you, but you don't have to pay a lawyer to do it." And so he guided me through getting all this paperwork, and I did the background check and the fingerprints and went and got this and went and got that and just mailed it all in. All right. Well, the day I submitted it was the month that John Bell Edwards went out of office. All right. That's how long ago this was. And so this past October, I got a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you've been granted your pardon hearing."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Really?" And so got prepared for the pardon hearing and had the hearing, and my wife prepared a statement. And, I went through the hearing and, told them my story, what was going on. And she gave her statement, and she gave such a powerful statement that they got to the end. And one of the ladies, they looked at me, we did it through Zoom. She goes, "You're a lucky man." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." And they said, "We can tell that you have changed your life and that we're going to unanimously recommend you for your pardon from the state of Louisiana. All right. For your felony with your gun rights back. All right."
Oh, wow.
And so only thing I'm doing is waiting for the governor to sign the actual paperwork and be mailed to me, and I'll be fully pardoned from where all this started. And that's the power of sobriety and just allowing the process to take over in my life and to work in my life on a daily basis. Do I always act like I'm a mature adult? No. Like just today, I've had one of those days I've heard Matt talk about where I'm just a bear. I woke up, I didn't get my way. The dog woke me up 4 times this morning. I had the opportunity to sleep late and didn't get to do it, and been an asshole since I got up. And so, apologize to my wife, try not to act like that tomorrow. And so this stuff doesn't absolve us. It's not like we're like mistake free and we don't have issues and with our emotional sobriety and things like that throughout the day. But I don't have to go get loaded over it anymore. I don't have to crumble my life down around my ankles because of one little issue. And it's such a good way to live. It's by far the best way I have ever lived is being in Alcoholics Anonymous and being sober. So if you want to call it an end, I'd call that the end. So
Well,
Yeah. Man,
that's
that's
a good story,
fantastic.
dude. Yeah.
Fantastic. One thing I picked up on because you and I, substance wise, methadone, all those things, I've did all that. I mean, you're reading all my mail, but it's funny to hear. Man, nowadays we have folks coming in sobriety wise, and you can go to the store and pick up marijuana like at a Circle K now, and so there's all these things going on. And it's good to hear your opinion on it. And we have folks on the methadone end and things that my personal thinking is if it's a short-term deal to help you along, I think it would work. The problem is think 90% of that stuff just becomes its own problem. But that's an interesting thing that we're coming through in AA now is other types of recovery. And I don't know where I land on all that stuff, but I do. I'm like you, zero substances. I'll go pick up a chip, but I'm also one of those that whatever can, I think Mike told a story one time of a guy down in South Louisiana in his group, and the guy drink, I don't remember, Mike, 100 beers a day. And he's like, "I can't stop." And the group was like, "Well, let's drink 90 this week." so
Yeah.
he drink 90 or whatever, and they got the dude down to like a 6-pack. God bless the dude. I
Well, the last
mean,
time I seen him, he had about a year, maybe 2 of sobriety, complete abstinence. But
yeah.
yeah, he was about 100 beers a day, 75 beers a day, somewhere in there.
So, whatever works, man, God bless them. I know that detox from methadone and all those pills isn't a lot of fun either. That's a
No,
rough one.
look, man, I'm kicking methadone. It's the middle of July, and I've got a hoodie on with the hood up. I'm riding in the car with no air conditioning on, and I'm shivering. That
Oh, yeah.
that that's not supposed to happen, you know?
No.
That stuff will make you wanna crawl inside a cardboard box and just lay there. That's rough. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, I used to come into AA meetings early in sobriety, and I'd introduce myself. I'd say, "I'm Jason. I'm an alcoholic and a dope fiend." And Elijah pulled me to the side one day, and he goes, "Hey, man, you just need to quit identifying yourself as a dope fiend." He goes, "You're an alcoholic." And I'm like, he goes, "And if you're not an alcoholic, well, there's a different program for you." He goes, "But from what you're telling me, you're an alcoholic. And if we take care of your alcoholism, you won't go do any of that other stuff."
Right.
And so he qualified me on the spot. And he goes, "When you drink, can you control how much you're going to drink?" I'm like, sometimes. He goes, "No, it's a yes or no question, you know, yes or no question." "Well, no, I can't control." He goes, "Can you stop abruptly?" "Well, sometimes." "No, it's a yes or no question. Can you stop abruptly?" "No, I cannot." He goes, "Do you obsess about it when you're not drinking?" "Yes, I do." He goes, "Then you're a real alcoholic. If you're a real alcoholic, we've got a solution for you. And it's right here in this book. Let's focus
Yeah.
on this book. It'll take care of everything else." And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. That man saved my life, because he was willing to take me through the steps. And so when I have people ask me to be their sponsor, I've turned one guy down. That's because he lives in Shreveport. I now live in Lindale. And I was like, "Man, I'm not here all the time in order for us to do it." But I've already picked up a sponsee in Tyler, and that's just from making one of those morning phone calls, Matt. I made a morning phone
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
I went to a
Yeah.
meeting. They gave me a phone list like I was a newcomer. And so I'm riding down the road. And I just started calling these people. All right. And one guy didn't answer the phone, but he called me back. We started chatting. And from that point forward, we either chatted or texted for just about every day. And then a couple of weeks ago, he said, "Hey, man, I need a sponsor. Will you be my sponsor?" And so he's got a year of sobriety. He picked up a year chip a couple of weeks ago, or last week,
Pretty
actually.
awesome.
And
That's
yeah,
real
it is
awesome.
awesome. And, when you get the opportunity to sit down with somebody and you do a fist step with them, and you can see the fear in their eyes. All right. You see how scared they are. And you look at them and you just go, "Look, man, just tell me what you didn't put on there. Let's start there. Just tell me what you did not put on there." And they'll look at you like, "How in the hell I didn't put something on there? Because I wasn't gonna put something on mine. That's how I know. All right, that's
Mhm.
how I know that." And then they get from the jump, they get that off their chest, and you can see it wash off of them. All right, you can see the relief come
Yeah.
into their eyes, and they relax, and then we can get into the resentments and the fears and the sexual inventory. Well, we get that bigger booger bear out of the way. All right, let's get that big one out of the way. Then we can move on and take care of the rest of it. It's a great thing to watch, to be able to
Yeah.
experience that with another man, the intimacy that it creates with another man that did not think was possible to have, in a relationship with another man, that you would be able to feel that with somebody. But it's one of the greatest things that I get to do in my life, period.
Sure.
Definitely.
Sure.
Definitely one of the best things.
Yep.
Isn't it funny about those sponsors too? You said something earlier about your sobriety date and you're panicked and all that stuff. And your sponsor's like, whatever, man, like just change it. It's not, it's so funny. I fished with Bobby, right? Me and him
Yep.
have fished together. He's been my sponsor the whole time I've been sober. And we're riding down the road last year, talking about something. He just looks over at me and he goes, "What was your drug of choice?" I'm like, "You don't even know what drugs I was doing? You're supposed to have this on." He's like, "I don't think
Yeah.
about that shit." I'm like, "Oh,
Uh,
okay." So I know he don't remember my fifth step if he don't even know what drugs I was doing. So,
Yeah,
but
well, he may not. I know that I'll be complaining about something. Elijah go, "Man, I've heard your fifth step. You're supposed to be dead or in prison." So,
yeah, yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what you're worried about. So,
yep, yep. Jason, man, thank you. That's really good, man. And it's gonna resonate with a lot of people that are gonna get to hear this. So
well,
Yeah.
good. I hope
I'm
so.
glad to know someone else knows where Burleson, Texas is, man.
Look,
That's what's on my driver's license is Burleson, Texas.
so, the company that you work for, that location in Burleson, I used to
Yeah,
ride my bike through that field. It was a
yeah,
field at the time, and now it's a bustling little area, but it didn't used to always be there because I lived so if you turn left off of 174 and run between those establishments down Metter, I think is the name of that road, and
yeah.
then you go into the backside of the neighborhood,
Mhm.
there's Con Street right there is my first house I lived in Burleson, Texas. So it's like maybe a fifth of a mile from where I grew up in Burleson.
So, how old are you, Jason?
I am 50.
Okay. So you're 2 years younger than me, and I can remember that the establishment I worked for, but the one on Burt Coons and the one in Bossier were
Yeah.
both one there were both farms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Both farms. That's so I'm only a couple years older than you, but I understand like the vision because I still get that vision from time to time. But
Yeah, and because I can see the dead grass growing up in that cracked black dirt, you know, because
yeah,
that dirt out there cracks, especially in the summer. You get these big, thick, big, wide cracks
Yeah.
in the dirt,
Yeah.
and you're like you'd lose a bike tire in there.
yeah.
Yep.
Well,
So,
guys, we
So,
appreciate it. Oh,
hey,
go, Matt.
I got to tell you this. Right before we came on to record, Weston and Kelly from Utah, they were one of the
Mhm.
first people that came on from outside our area, came on and told their story. They're from Utah. Great people. Me and Weston still talk. He's a big BYU guy. So they were down in New Orleans this weekend for New Year's Eve. I think with BYU football, they were down there or something. And he had posted some stuff about taking airboat tours and alligators and all that stuff. So I was talking to him right before we recorded this, and I was like, "Hey, man, you're down in our neck of the woods." And he said, "Oh my God." He goes, "We went in that French Quarter, man, on New Year's." He goes, "Me and Kelly were the only two people down there that weren't drinking." I was like,
Yeah.
"Now you see why me and Mike had such a hard time." You know?
He needs to watch
So,
some Homicide Hunter before you go down there on New Year's
yeah,
Eve, man.
man. Look. But anyway, he's like, "We loved it." He's like, "But I had no idea the amount of alcohol down here." I was like, "Yeah, yeah." So
It
anyway,
is. It's pure alcohol down there,
yeah,
man.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
it's in the water.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Well,
I'm glad they had a good time. So,
yeah.
but
And they stayed
anyway,
sober and got to see Nola. So
yep, yep, yep.
well,
So
guys, I appreciate both of you. And Jason, look forward to hearing from you. Loved hearing
Absolutely.
your story.
yeah.
Matt, you and Jason can talk outside of this on how he got the .66. I saw Matt, he was like, wow, that's got to be the highest grade point average I've heard in a long time. And I was like, Matt, that's the low ball in, man. You gotta
Yeah, no, that was my blood alcohol content actually in school. So I didn't know what we were talking about. So
All right, guys, I'm going to close it out. But from Bossier City, Louisiana, Lindale, Texas, and Reno, Nevada, we're the Grouch and the Brainstorm.